Welcome to Advocacy Politics Unplugged, the show that will dissect critical policy issues, explore the art of advocacy, and share insights on how to make your voice heard in today's ever-changing political landscape. I'm your host, John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Business Council of Westchester. We're very thankful to our sponsors, Con Edison and Verizon. Con Edison customers, are you looking for an efficient way to heat and cool your home? Consider geothermal heat pumps. These innovative systems turn energy from the ground around your home into cooled or heated air for climate control, providing you significant energy savings and year-round comfort. Con Edison is dedicated to sustainability and helping customers save. That's why they offer incentives for installing geothermal heat pumps. Eligible homeowners could receive rebates that significantly lower their upfront cost. By choosing geothermal, homeowners won't just save money, they'll also reduce their carbon footprint and contribute to a cleaner environment. To learn more about geothermal heat pumps and available incentives, visit coned.com/geothermal. It's a smart choice for both homes and the planet. Don't just connect your business, make it even smarter. Partner with Verizon to gain the control, security, and speed to overcome challenges and adapt in real time. Verizon's cutting-edge networking technologies can help you build a strong, agile foundation for your organization. They help schools and small businesses access the essential technology they need to compete in today's digital world and are on a mission to help solve some of the biggest challenges the world faces today by leveraging their technology, innovation, and people. Verizon is working to open doors for many communities through digital skills training, grant opportunities, and more. To protect the planet for future generations, they're investing in renewable energy and improving the efficiency of their networks through the power of technology and shared knowledge. Verizon is helping people build the confidence to change lives for the better. Today, we're very excited to have as a guest Colin Smith, who is the member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators, and also now the chair of the Westchester County Affordability and Economic Development Task Force. Let me tell you a little bit about Legislator Smith. He represents Legislative District Number 1, which includes Cortland, Peekskill, and Yorktown. He's a lifelong Westchester resident, born and raised in Peekskill. He was elected to the Westchester County Board of Legislators in 2019, and as currently chairs the board's Committee on Legislation, and as we've just mentioned, he's been appointed to the chair of the board's newly launched Affordability Economic Development Task Force, which we will talk about throughout the course of today's episode. An attorney by profession, he earned his BA in philosophy from Cedarville University and his JD from Pace Law School in White Plains. His public service experience includes prior service on the Peekskill School Board and the Peekskill Common Council, and his legal background includes work as a former Bronx Assistant DA, nearly 2 decades of experience advising individuals, families, and businesses. His work in public office is focused on practical policy response to community needs, including affordability, housing stability, consumer protection, public safety, workforce opportunity, and the interaction between economic development and social policy. Legislator Smith, thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
I got to ask, because we always, as a former elected official, I always am curious about how people ended up in the seat that they're in. So you're an assistant DA in the Bronx. You lived in Peekskill all your life. What was the decision to finally run for the County Board of Legislators?
Well, so I'll tell you, this is, what I tell people when they ask me how I ended up in politics is I say by accident, or maybe an accident might not be the right word, but I feel like I almost tripped and fell into it. A friend of mine, this was going back to 2011, 2012. I was with a friend of mine, talking with a friend of mine who was a city member of the Peekskill City School Board. And he had mentioned that, they were looking for people to run in the upcoming election cycle because some people were stepping down or they were retiring. And I asked him, well, what are the requirements? And he looked at me, and he was like, you'd be great. and I ran for school board. I won. I did almost two full terms on the school board, about 5.5, 6 years. And of course, John, as a former elected, if you win an election anywhere, you are now up to be, a candidate everywhere, yeah. Right? So
no, that's true.
So, yeah. So Common Council and then ultimately Westchester Board of Legislators.
And, one of the things, and one of my favorite quotes in politics is from Teddy Roosevelt, where he said, all politics is local. And obviously
Absolutely.
the role that you've played on the local council in Peekskill, but also now in the Board of Legislatures, it all happens from understanding that all politics is local, and issues that your constituents and the businesses in your district face every day are always going to have to be a priority for you to address. Before we get into the Westchester County Affordability and Economic Development Task Force, let's talk a little bit about the genesis of how this committee came into play. I mean, obviously, affordability is on the tip of everybody's mouth in terms of when you talk to, whether it's a member of the County Board of Legislators or the New York State Senate or the Assembly or in Congress. But obviously, what we have stressed at the Business Council of Westchester is we also need to talk about the affordability of doing business in Westchester and in New York State. So how did the task force come about? What was the chairman's role in picking you, and what was his basically saying mission that he wanted you to accomplish?
So that's a great question, and I am very appreciative of Chairman Gashi for selecting me as the chair of this newly formed task force. And I think the chairman comes from the standpoint, the perspective of what you just articulated, that affordability is not simply limited to one narrow or one particular sector of our community. We talk about at the Board of Legislators, of course, when we use the term affordability, oftentimes that refers to affordability in housing, but there's a wider world there of affordability in being able to live here, not just the cost of housing, but the cost of commuting, the cost of energy, the cost of food, the cost of your general points of consumerism. And so that is really where we come in as legislators, where we feel like it is an important enough issue, and it's always the time is never wrong to address an issue like that. But we live in one of the most one of the wealthiest and most expensive counties in the country. And so we want to do our part in trying to address those issues, and to the extent we're able to help alleviate them, both on the private side or the the worker side, as well as on the business side.
And even though Westchester County, sometimes I have to remind colleagues from around the state, yes, Westchester County has some affluent areas. We also have some urban centers in which the majority of folks live under the poverty level, and businesses are still trying to survive in those areas as well. So I know that the task force set up some initial goals. The first one was really to identify the real cost drivers. Talk to us a little bit about what you're looking to accomplish in that area.
So and that's a great segue, because I think that identifying what's driving costs for businesses here in Westchester County and how that relates to affordability on both sides is really the first what's the word I'm looking for? So the first step in that planning part, because we have to see where are the areas that need to be looked at and addressed, and then once we have that data, then we can start to formulate a plan to address it. And I believe that was at the sheet, the document that I had given you.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. So we had when we announced the formation of the task force, I sort of put together a list of areas that I thought we need to look at, and we describe them as work areas or lanes. What's going on with small businesses and tourism, what's going on with housing and transportation, childcare, sustainability and resilience. As you mentioned, Westchester is very affluent in some respects, and it's very impoverished in some respects. And we have environmental justice communities, alongside of, not alongside of, but not far from areas that have three acre zoning, where, because that's just the nature of it. And so I think it's, identifying what are on the one side, what what are workers having to pay? What are they having to where the areas that they are struggling with most, and how that impacts businesses? Because as you stated, to do business, and I have some just some quick statistics here
Great.
that I think are current, but there are what was it? I think there's like 100. There's 33 or 32,000 businesses here in Westchester that are, like LLCs, corporations, partnerships, but there's like 118,000 non-business businesses, non-established, non-incorporated, and that is a huge number of businesses, and the unemployment rate is relatively low. It's like 3.6% in Westchester, which I think suggests or means that businesses are they're competing for workers. But of course,
no, it's true. And the challenges that employees are finding, whether it's a non-for-profit or a small business, mid-sized businesses, even some of our larger corporations, is that recruitment and retention.
Right.
How do we recruit talent, and how do we keep them here?
Right.
And some of the challenges that you've already raised are ones that we hear every day. And so the fact that this task force really is going to drill down, I think, is really important. Our guest for today's episode of Advocacy and Politics Unplugged is Colin Smith, a member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators and the chair of the Westchester County Affordability and Economic Development Task Force. So being at the initial press conference with you and then seeing some of the other work that is beginning to formulate the task force, obviously you're going on a listening tour too. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the listening tour is really, it's tied right into what you asked the previous question about cost drivers. So the plan for the listening tour is to really set up, I'll throw out a number, maybe 10 to 15 sessions over the course of the next few months, going into different communities here throughout Westchester, and trying to hear from the different sectors of business communities, different areas of different sectors in the nonprofit sector, because we use these terms like business and nonprofit, but really those are umbrella terms, right? And not all businesses are the same, not all nonprofits are the same. They have different cost drivers, they have different concerns, and different things which impact their viability as going concerns. So the first, like I said, 3 or so months will be, and we're still working on the list. Sure. Right, will be to do a list. Will be to go throughout the county and hear from stakeholders. That's the primary stakeholders in business, stakeholders in housing, stakeholders in childcare, in energy. All of those areas are the areas that we want to pinpoint to find out from the boots on the ground. Yep.
Well, that's key.
What are the issues?
That's key. And again, one of the things that we strive to do at the Business Council of Westchester is to serve as that bridge, and is to identify the same issues that your task force is going to be tackling. And you've just checked off a bunch of them. Infrastructure. Again, we need to have a sound infrastructure. Childcare. Childcare has got to be now one of the key economic development drivers that all of us need to focus on. I don't think you can go to any employer and not have a conversation with them when they don't say, yeah, childcare is something that we're struggling with too. So how do we increase funding? How do we increase slots? How do we get more businesses engaged? Because again, it's a great recruitment and retention tool if you can say we're engaged to help our employees have childcare as well. And then on energy. Yeah, energy is, Westchester County has been in the epicenter of the changing energy landscape for the state. Yeah. Right, with Indian Point closing, and I was in your backyard almost where that happened. So you've seen some of the ramifications of that. But more importantly, how are we going to build that reliable, affordable, and sustainable power system? Right. So these are some of the things that it excited me when you and Chairman Gashi reached out to us, because hopefully the Business Council of Westchester can be a resource. We can help identify businesses in different parts of the county who will more than happy sit down and begin to have those conversations.
No, that's great. And, a alongside of the the listening, or setting up this listening tour, I mean, part of that is appointing members of the task force who will be involved in it. And I think that it probably, I don't want to say it goes without saying, but certainly someone like yourself, and then we had other, we had the Westchester County Association, we had nonprofit Westchester, who also had representatives at that task force. I mean, your involvement will be crucial to this effort, and so we're gonna take you up on that. And in fact, just by way of scheduling, we're looking at probably having the first meeting of the task force itself near the end of June. Okay, which I know June, July, not ideal times to August to be kicking things off, but we'll work with that. We'll work around that, and so
the phones aren't ringing as much, so you can get some more work done. So it might not be a bad thing.
Well, we're hoping that, but also people are away. People go on vacation, and so. Sometimes trying to trying to schedule can be a challenge.
It's a challenge, and I guess again one of the things that you talked about in the framework was again developing that roadmap. So just let's take your district for example. Obviously, you know your district better than anyone. What are some of the sectors that you really want to talk to, and some of the stories you've already heard?
Oh, so I mean, in my district, for example, my district is actually a nice sort of microcosm of the county, because you have the city of Peekskill, which sits, sort of at the center of my district, and then it's flanked by, geographically by Cortland and by Yorktown. And it runs the gamut from, Cortland Manor with its, $1.5 million mansions to the low income housing that we have in places like Peekskill and in parts of Cortland and Yorktown. And it runs from, the central school districts that every student has busing to city school districts like Peekskill, where busing is not an issue, or not as much of an issue. So the needs are varied, and from a standard of living, cost of living standpoint. So housing, right, infrastructure, energy costs, and just how the shutdown of Indian Point impacted the community, particularly the communities of the villages of Buchanan and the Hendrick Hudson School District, right? Education, of course, is fundamental to a vibrant, professional, prepared workforce. Sure. And so working with the school districts to help them advocate on, state and federal levels to ensure adequate funding. So, education, housing, there's a ton of, but a lot of affordable housing that has gone up in Peekskill over the last several years. But there needs to be more, and that creates jobs, right? You engage with the contractors. And that implicates the state, right? Because the housing community renewal, Department of Housing Community Renewal, there's state funding available for that. Dealing with or addressing the environmental justice community portion. Peekskill is an environmental justice community where it's you have two, formerly nuclear power plant now shutting down, but you have Wheelabrator, which is the county's waste facility. So those are issues that need to be addressed in somewhat of a different manner, but it also creates opportunity because there's programs at the state and federal level that can help in terms of building and developing more sustainable infrastructure, and that ties into the to the workforce and job availability.
And we always say when you have exciting housing development projects that we've seen in Peekskill and other parts of your district, it is going to, as you said, create jobs, but it's also going to help the related businesses that are already there. And that's one of the missing pieces that when we talk about development as being a positive thing.
Absolutely.
Not being, something that is going to have a negative impact on the community. You're listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network. Our guest today is Colin Smith, who is a member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. One of the things that, as we talked about energy, that we've seen is trying to get the community to understand that putting moratoriums and bans on solar or battery isn't helping. And we used to use the word NIMBY, not in my backyard. Now my favorite phrase is CAVE, communities against virtually everything. How do we move, you're on the front lines. How do we begin to move people to understand that they just can't say no all the time? Or else my question to them is then what's your plan B?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't know if I can give you a good plan B, but I can certainly say that in dealing with any community where there's a proposal for development that's going to disrupt, whether it's, disrupting traffic, whether it's disrupting the environment, whether it's just sort of disrupting the, sort of the peace and the feng shui of the community. That comes, that's often, part and parcel of the cost of developing. And I think that the, threading that needle is not easy, but I think, elected officials and public officials, municipal workers have to develop, in addition to developing their relationships with the developers, yep. the builders, right? The contractors, the entrepreneurs of these industries that you've referenced. They have to develop, a good relationship with the community. But sometimes that means you have to make decisions that may not be popular in the moment, but in the long term, are going to be better for the community. And I think there's reasonable minds can differ on when how that applies, but certainly one of the that was an ongoing argument with the closure of Indian Point, and now we're trying to figure out a way to utilize that in a way that is going to be economically productive, but at the same time is going to safeguard the environment. So I think to answer your question is, it really is about, long-term planning, solid planning strategy, and then being able to implement that, despite what may sometimes be doing things that are cause you to do things that are unpopular.
Well, and what I've encouraged members, developers who are in projects is, you got to go in and you got to listen, right? You got to listen to the community's concerns, the quality of life issues that, they feel are going to be impacted by any type of new development. You're not going to be able to satisfy everybody. But if you can at least begin to hear and even in some cases make changes to the original scope of your project to address some of those concerns, it makes life a heck of a lot easier because, again, you're building that two-way line of communication, which is so important. We're running out of time, but I got to ask again, as you take on this responsibility of chairing the Westchester County Affordability and Economic Development Task Force, we'll have you back in a year. When we have you back in a year, the first question we're going to ask you is, what are some of the things that you think really have been accomplished in that first year?
So that's a great question, and I think what we are hoping to accomplish in this first year is, we're laid the infrastructure, we laid the groundwork for this task force. We want to do the listening tour so that we can, identify what are the key cost drivers, and what that means in terms of action, developing and formulating a plan for action. And then, the third part of that is then accumulating that data, synthesizing it and coming up with a solid plan to do, to move forward, in the areas of affordability and economic development.
So if people who are listening to this, and we have businesses that are not members of the Business Council of Westchester, and that's great, but if they wanted to contact your office to see if they could be engaged in this process, is there an email that they should use?
Absolutely. They can reach me at CD as in David, SS at westchestercountyny.gov, G-O-V.
Great. And we really encourage businesses who are listening to this to get engaged, because this task force will really be working from the ground up to try to to develop strategies to deal with affordability. Our guest this afternoon has been Westchester County Board of Legislator Colin Smith, who is the chair of the Westchester County Affordability and Economic Development Task Force. We look forward at the Business Council of Westchester to be a partner in this. As I said, we can help you find members who can come to the table with suggestions and start that dialogue. So thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for taking on this job. I don't know in a year from now if you'll still be smiling as you are right now, but we hope so. But again, thank you for your dedication and your commitment to the county and to New York State.
Thank you, John. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for tuning in to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged. And again, we want to thank our sponsors, Con Edison and Verizon.
Be sure to check out the BCW Podcast Network's expansive lineup of shows: Leadership Unleashed, What's Trending, Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, The Member Spotlight, and Nonprofit Voices of Impact. The Business Council of Westchester is the county's largest business membership organization focusing on economic development and advocacy. With over 1,100 members, it is our mission to work for the profitability of our members and the prosperity of the Westchester community. To learn more about the Business Council of Westchester, please go to thebcw.org.